Welcome to Playful Podcast, your guide into the underground scene where we discover topics on kink and electronic music every week. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on our next episode. We're excited to be here today with DJ Nick Moody. Nick is from Amsterdam, now lives in Berlin. And in Amsterdam was where he started DJing and partying at a very early age. This has brought him to some insights about psychedelics that we are here to talk more about today. But first, we want to highlight that this is not a conversation with any professional inputs, but just a conversation where personal experiences are shared. If you or anyone you know is suffering from drug use, there is help to get. We also don't recommend anyone below the age of 18 to listen to this episode. In this conversation, we compare the Berlin and Amsterdam techno and party scenes, as well as their drug climates. We also speak about Nick's journey and what made him change his mind on what he needs for a good party, as well as what this can say about the time we live in, and so much more. Let's get it. I am Amanda, and this is Playful Podcast. Finally, as I just said. Welcome to Playful Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here. We're going to speak some about psychedelics and partying and clubbing. But first of all, you started your own musical because you're also a DJ. Yeah. So your own musical journey super early. Yeah. How did you get into music or electronic music?
It was actually pretty accidental, or I was very lucky, is what I always say, because there was this brand in the Netherlands called Thunderdome. It's still there. It's the biggest gabber event of the world, I guess, one of the oldest events, and I was a pretty big fan of it. It's like my parents always used to go to raves, not these kind of raves. They used to go to more like the trancy, old school Chesto, old school Armin van Buuren in the early 2000s, when the genre was just rising up. And I think I always got inspired by seeing them go to these big events, and I also wanted to be having to do something with it. And I remember I think it was television. We had a television channel called The Box. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it was here as well, but you had teletext where you could look up codes to tracks, and then you have to text the network and they would play the song, and so you could request your own songs. But it was they played a lot of gabber music there as well, so that for me as a young kid was the only place, because we didn't have internet back then.
Oh,
yeah. So that's how I discovered this music, and it was hard and aggressive. And it's like everything a little young kid thinks would be cool. And I started a radio program online, and I was the first one to start a forum. There was there's a forum website called Party Flock. Before social media, Facebook, Instagram, this was the place to be for everyone who was in the rave community in the Netherlands. And I started the topic over there, and I think 2 episodes later, because it was a weekly show, they did a giveaway. You could win a CD, and you only had to email them why. So I was
How old were you?
I was 10 or 11 back then. Yeah. So it was, hey, I'm Nick, I'm 11 years old, I'm a huge fan, also a DJ, so all my allowance money goes to records. And the CD, it's pretty expensive for a little kid back in the day, so it was I really hope to win the CD. And then I think the next day already I got an email back, was well, don't worry about the CD, you got that, but it's so cool that you're DJing, how would you like to play with us next week already? And
wow.
Yeah, then I remember I was just a little kid crying and screaming around the house because my biggest dream suddenly came true within one email. So that's how I got into it.
And that's from the photo you have on your Instagram?
Yeah.
That's epic. Yeah. Oh my God, you must have been so overwhelmed.
I was pretty, because for me it's basically if you compare it to techno, Thunderdome would be Berghain. Yeah. So for me that was suddenly I was in the biggest brand in the scene, and it was super overwhelming. Yeah. But also very I was always looking up to that world and these people, but as soon as I became part of it, also like the looking up to it like faded away because it became normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not the illusion anymore.
No, exactly.
Ah, right. So how did it evolve from then? Because then you were like 10, 11 year already in the DJ booth, already like, you know, start being part of the scene and the parties that follow. So, and your did you ever also party with your parents, by the way?
Well, back in the days, not.
You were too young.
I didn't think, that was the first problem. And I didn't think it was cool either. Plus, we had like different tastes in music. They tolerated mine. And they always went along with me. So they went with me to clubs and to festivals and to gigs, and to the radio show very often. So they were involved, but we didn't party together.
All right.
That did happen later, though. Like once I started working in the music industry, and I could like invite them to all the parties and festivals I was working. They would become the standard. They still join some festivals or parties. I think my mom is even coming to Berlin this summer. I'm gonna take her to Berghain. I'm gonna show her around. So yeah, so they still join sometimes.
So sweet. Yeah. So, but then, because I guess your friends were older than you were then. The ones you partied with, I guess.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, I have to say, like, the backstage culture don't really party. It's more like being present at these events and less about partying. But yeah, all these people were like at least 10, 20 years older than I was. So I always grew up with people surrounding me that were much older.
Yeah. Did you get in contact with drugs and alcohol back then too, or did you feel that you were protected from that?
Yeah,
if so?
I was very protected in the beginning because they all were like, we have a little boy in our presence. I mean, they were not like hiding it from me, but I wasn't allowed to partake in that until I was, I think, 15. No, I think it was 15 or 16 when I did hard drugs for the first time. Of course, I had smoked a joint before. I'm from the Netherlands, so it's quite common. But no, when I was a little kid, not too much. It was also good because I was like, because of them protecting me, I was also a bit like, no, I don't do drugs, you know.
Yeah,
so I felt a bit like,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That changed later when I got a bit older and I could like finally go to these parties as well, besides just being there for an hour to play a set and then the promoter getting a little nervous and being like, oh, guys, it's getting a little bit late, maybe he needs to leave now. But then once there was not a problem anymore, then I started partying properly.
But like in Amsterdam, are you legal? Is it legal to go clubbing when you're 15? No, it's 18.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you had like some fake ID or whatever?
No, I was lucky that I was involved in these people who were like running the shows, that I could like always be on the guest list or join me. I remember the first time Thunderdome was in 2006. I was allowed to look at the build-up. Like this is a massive indoor festival for like 50,000 people. I think, 50,000 people now. So it was huge and I could go there and check it out. And I remember them being at some point, it was like 1 hour before opening time, and they were like, oh, you're in already, so like, I'm not gonna find you. But if they do, never ever tell them it was us letting you in.
You're like, of course not.
Yeah.
Okay, but but how was it then? Because you got in contact with harder drugs when you were like 15, and then you evolved a bit of an addiction.
Yeah, that happened, I think, a little bit later. Because this was like when I was 15, and I wouldn't even call it using drugs. So like sometimes trying it a little bit, but it was not like part of my system. I think this happened a bit later because when I got involved in Thunderdome and the radio show and DJing, it was also the moment my parents were divorcing, and I think I just like this was my way out. Like I could go to Amsterdam, hang out with these guys, be in the music industry, be part of the cool people, you know. So it was perfect for me to like escape every like the chaos and the uncomfortabilities that were going on at home at the time. And I think I slowly started to develop like a little bit of a unhealthy coping mechanism by that. And at first it wasn't even drugs, it was drinking mostly, because that was the one thing that I was allowed and also could afford. I mean, I was a little boy, like, I'm not gonna spend my fucking money on drugs. But alcohol was, of course, always present in these backstages. There's always a fridge and stage manager happy to hand out drinks. So that was my go-to drug, so to say. And yeah, over the years, I think it was when I was 24, was when I had my first real breakdown. And then I started realizing that, hey, this is not a very healthy way. Then I like realized basically that I had an addiction.
But then you were taking drugs every weekend, or what was the?
No, drugs was not really the problem back then.
Alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol mostly.
Yeah.
That was like, and only at parties when I was not
Only
drinking
at
at
parties, so
home.
never
alone
at home.
No. So I wouldn't.
Was that like a block you had in your mind? Like, I'm not gonna drink at home alone.
Yeah.
Just to like keep it safe, or like not crossing that boundary.
Mm-hmm. No, not even consciously, but it was just not like I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, why would you drink at home? It's like the alcohol was part of partying.
Yeah.
So that's where it happened. Luckily, so I wouldn't call it like a major addiction. But then when I had this breakdown, it was like after breaking up with my first real girlfriend, and it's always the moment when you finally get like a mirror and there's someone like truly telling you how your behavior is and how it's influencing them. That happened. So I started to pay a bit more attention to my habits and the way I was behaving. And when I tried to go to therapy, that's where they told me like, yeah, Nick, if you are on these parties every weekend, then we don't really know if we're treating the feelings that are coming out of your heavy weekends or that these are your real feelings. So then they were like, yeah, maybe you need to try to lay it down a little bit. And it was pretty difficult because back then my life was already, let's say, 90% based in nightlife. Was my work, my personal life, my friends, my creative outlet, my hobby, like everything was already evolving around nightlife. So it's really hard to like take drugs and substances out of the equation if it's your whole life. So when I went to rehab, it was more like therapy. You go there once a week just to talk and like see what's the problem, where it's coming from, and try to come up a bit with a system. And for me, that was, like I said, it was hard to completely block it out. Of course, it is possible. There are some people, artists that I know that are definitely doing it. And it's like, I'm super proud of these people. But
it
also,
takes strength.
Yeah, a lot. And you basically also have to like step aside from the scene a little bit. Like these people mostly come in, do their show, go out again. You don't see them in the backstages. They don't after party. And that's like, yeah, that's a commitment you have to do because this is the way things go in the industry most of the time. So yeah, that was the moment that I learned that I had a problem, but luckily it was a very innocent problem back then, and that was also my start of like healing myself and working on myself. So I'm actually pretty grateful that it happened and that I got these insights and also learned a lot about myself. Yeah.
And then you tried some ayahuasca, or what happened? Like
That followed really quickly afterwards. I think this breakdown that I was talking about happened in 2017, by the end of the year. No, in the middle of the year. And I remember then when I went to rehab, I went completely sober. So I stopped drinking, smoking, weed, drugs, everything you can think of.
When you were 24?
24, yeah.
You went to rehab for how long?
I think it only took like 2 or 3 months, because then I was already sober. First month was a bit struggling. Second month I finally managed to get everything out of my system. And then they said do it 1 month so you can like feel how life is without these substances in your system.
How did it feel like?
Pretty, I have to say, not a huge difference, because for me the problems were mostly weekend related. Like I said, not weekly. It was not like it was not an ongoing theme in my life. So I can imagine if you like get sober after drinking every day, or well, I have to say I smoked weed every day. So I did stop with something that was influencing me daily.
And also, I mean, it's not only the drugs or alcohol. It's also like the social thing that it's also a part of it. Like I guess it's some social abstinence a bit too. Like not getting the kicks from the clubs and.
That was hard. I needed to find like a bit of a structure for myself there. So first, like of course you don't have hangovers anymore. You don't wake up and you're like, what did I do last night? Or this feeling that something might have happened, So that was really good for me to like calm down. But then exactly what you are saying now is what I was struggling with, because I missed the connection with my friends and like I could not join them in their ways of partying as I used to do before. But I came up with a bit of a clever trick. Since I was already so like working in nightlife, I basically said to myself, okay, you're just going to be present at events while working. And then it's also going to be a lot easier to like stay away from substances because you can just tell yourself, hey, I'm at work. You're also like doing something else. Because back in the days, I was the backstage manager of Warehouse Elementenstraat in Amsterdam, which is it's a big club where they used to. It's more like a warehouse, and they used to throw raves like Reactor in there, and yeah, so I was basically serving all the people and making sure that they had their fun and everything would go smoothly during the night. But in the meantime, that helped me to stay away from all of that. And it was for me the perfect fix because then I could still be involved. I did not have to let go of my work, my friends, my social life, whatever. And I did that for a full year. But then I reached the point that I was like, yeah, it's also quite boring, just to be honest.
Yeah.
And that was from the beginning on. It was never the goal to completely stay away from substances, but rather to learn how to control them. So I already in my mind, it was like, okay, I need to make a point because 1 month became 2 months became 3, 4, rehab stopped in the meantime because it was clean and doing a good job. And it was like, how long am I going to take on with this? And it was like, I'm not going to change 10 years of habits within a few months. So maybe just take 1 year, a full year. I remember doing Awakenings Festival to Awakenings Festival. It was the first time that I got back in the party scene again. Okay. And after that, my relationship with substances completely changed, I have to say. Alcohol was not I remember first when I was like having a drink, the second drink would be in my mind already. And that completely changed. Now, well, you offered me a beer before we started the talk. I barely drink alcohol anymore. Yeah. So that really changed. And also with the drugs, was mostly cocaine because that's the gabber scene is just strong liquor and cocaine. That's the main thing. Even though I never bought it, it was just always like getting bumps from people who had it. But that also changed. It was like, no, don't want this substance anymore. It's not like.
And how? What was it? Just that you associated this with you not feeling good in yourself, or what do you think made the click for you?
I think just the. Well, I think I know. We're coming back to the ayahuasca that you were asking about earlier. Yeah. There were, like, of course, staying absent from a substance for such a long of time, it changes your relationship. So I think that just the time already of not taking it already had took a big part in my change. But ayahuasca is something I started with, I think I was 2 months sober. And then I got a Facebook event invite. It was from a friend who organized these ceremonies in Amsterdam. And I already heard some pretty good stories about it, and I was super interested, scared as well, but I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just gonna join. And then I went there, did the first ceremony, and then the whole plant medicine journey started because there was it wasn't really a life-changing moment the first time I did ayahuasca. It came like later on, a few ceremonies later.
How was what was the first time like then?
Scary, really scary. I just went there by myself in a group of people that I never met.
But had you then done any psychedelics before ayahuasca? So that was like seeing things were not your normal.
Yeah. I don't think I really was onto psychedelics before. So this was the first time. I remember it being very visual and like you said, seeing things that were not there or were there, but you're not able to see them without taking the medicine. But I was really scared, really nervous as well because you don't know what's gonna happen. You just know like you're gonna take something, and then for a few hours it will take over control of you.
Yeah, you're not gonna come back in like the closest 7 hours.
No,
so it's like a commitment.
Yeah, and you can also not be like, hey guys, I don't like this, take me out.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you know, like once you go,
game over.
Yeah. But it was in the end. I remember coming home and I was like, I don't really know what's all the fuss about. It was like a beautiful experience, but nothing life-changing yet. But that's also what the shaman told me, because they always fly in shamans from the South America, from the Amazon. And they told me, like, do it 3 times at least. So I just continued this journey, and then later on some big changes started to happen.
What was it?
Yeah, it's like different every time, but I remember I did it 3 times in Amsterdam. I always felt like I want to go. I feel I can go a little bit deeper, because also in Amsterdam you have to realize that when you partake in such a ceremony, you just have your life going on. So you finish your work, or maybe you take a day off and you prepare, and then you go there. But ceremony mostly lasts one night, and then you go back to your normal life again. So they advised me, okay, go to South America, go to the Amazon where the medicine comes from, and just do a retreat. So I did. I went to the Amazon of Bolivia for 3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks? That's a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Intense.
Yeah, we started the whole. It was called the Shamanic Retreats. We started in the Andes, where I did an Ayahuasca ceremony. And that was not on the schedule, so I just arrived at the complex, and we were there. Everyone was like gathering. I was the only non-Spanish speaking person as well, so everything was being explained in Spanish, and then like 5 minutes of English. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm being a little bit left out here. So I was super nervous, and then they explained like, okay, we're gonna do a ceremony tonight. And I was like, wow, I'm totally not prepared, and it was not on the schedule. Me being a super control freak, I was like starting to freak out. And then during that ceremony, I think that was my first breakthrough. It was like it was a stone ceremony room. It's like a hut outside on the land. Well, in Amsterdam, we always had like yoga centers, or like really nice, beautiful places with blankets and with like mattresses and nice buckets and people taking care of you. And in Bolivia, it was like really hardcore. It was just like sit down on a bit of stone, and candles would go out, completely dark. Everyone like helping in the ceremony was also taking the medicine as well. So it was also a bit like, oh, so no one is sober here. And then I got the most scary ceremony that I ever had. It was like, at some point, I just remember I was trying to hold control, and ayahuasca is all about like letting go of control, and that's when the magic starts to happen. It's like I always call it, I compare it with like being a marionette. It's like you're not in control anymore once you take the medicine, and as long as you try to take that control, you're gonna have a bad time because the puppet master is way more stronger than you are, and that's the lesson I learned there. But that was much bigger team, of course, because it was not only me trying to have control in the ceremony, it was like me trying to control everything in my life. Right. So that's an example of something.
Then ayahuasca was just slapping your face over and over again.
Yeah, and that's a lesson I'm still not fully integrated, because this is the feedback I still get sometimes, like you're way too tense, you're trying to control everything, and just life is just about letting go and experience it. Yeah. So this is an example of how these like ceremonies, like something like small in the ceremony, can have a big impact on the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, but then how come you moved from Amsterdam to Berlin?
Well,
let me know if I should take out the...
No, I love my tea
like
strong. It's perfect, yeah.
Tastes like ayahuasca. All right.
No, the Berlin story happened during the pandemic. I was invited to play at the Generator Hostel by a friend of mine called Echoes of October. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Generator Hostel during the pandemic.
Yeah.
It was a pretty fun place to hang out. Totally not suitable for raves, but we tried to make something work over there. And that's when it was my second trip to Berlin, but the first time that I stayed for a longer period, I was there for...
Which year? When are we? Like how?
First summer of the pandemic. So
first summer of the pandemic. So 2020.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the first time that I stayed in Berlin for like 3 weeks, and I got to know everyone, got a bit into the lifestyle. I was like, fuck, I like it so much more over here. I compared it to my friends still make jokes about this, because I used to call them, I'm like, this is like ADE land, Amsterdam Dance Event, because during Amsterdam Dance Event is when everyone comes to Amsterdam. And suddenly you have like all your friends from all over the world being present at one place. You hang out at their hotels, you go to their shows, you have food with them. And I would normally, like regular weekends in Amsterdam, you would only see them in a club, a few hours. They would go again, like not a personal setting. And here I could hang out with everyone. So for me, it really resembled like the ADE feeling that I had in Amsterdam. And I love it because I'm like in the music industry for so long. And since,
yeah,
like
so many friends all just spread out.
Yeah. And it's my life. Like I say, it's not a hobby, it's not a job. It's just, for me, there's no plan B. This is my life now. So for me, it was like coming home in a warm bath, or like having a family that I wasn't aware of. And then also because Amsterdam was completely shut down, nothing was going on. And we had the open air parties here in Berlin. I was like, why should I stay at home and sit there and complain? And I can be in Berlin and just continue the life at least a little bit. That's plus me not being tied to work anymore, because also my work was in the event industry. It was all stopped suddenly, so there were like no strings attached anymore, and I was like, time for a new adventure.
All right.
And it took me a year. I was in between, like that summer that I just talked about, and moving to Berlin took me a year, but best decision I made.
Yeah? Okay, because Berlin is also a city that is very much tied to like, like not so many rules. The clubs are open very late. It's like, you can, at least if you compare to many other places, you can be naked in the clubs. It's not so like conservative. But if we compare like the alcohol and drug culture in Berlin with Amsterdam, what would you say is the differences?
I have a really funny story. Like, I remember coming to Berlin the first time, and a friend of mine was working at I'm not gonna mention the club, but was working at a club and giving me like a tour backstage. And I remember like the first room that we opened was the staff room where they were having their breaks. And I came in and there was like a huge towel on the table with a big plate of speed. And in Amsterdam, we also use drugs, and people who work at events, and I know they take drugs, but it's very less obvious. It's out of sight. So I think it's a lot more normalized here. And it's also something I like, because we know it happens. Why would we hide it? I mean, of course, you're not going to take drugs on the dance floor, because it can damage a club, or a club can be closed if there's a lot of people taking drugs out in the open. But I think that's the biggest difference, the way it's being normalized here, and it's just part of life. While in Amsterdam, it's also part of life, but we're not so open about it. It's also the way people take drugs, and here there's like this whole...
Yeah, it's more legal in Amsterdam. I mean, at least the weed and the shrooms.
Yeah, well, shrooms are not.
Really?
Only the spores. It's super weird.
Okay.
You can buy the spores, but not the grown mushrooms.
What's the difference?
Yeah, still have to grow them. So you can buy your grow kits with the unhedged mushrooms in there already, but you cannot buy like fully grown mushrooms. Okay. You can buy fully grown truffles though. And same with weed. You can buy it in a coffee shop and you can smoke it, but you're not allowed to grow it. So the coffee shops, like the stash magically appears, falls out of the air, because there's no rules or regulations for growing weed in the Netherlands.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, so it looks a bit more like open, but I think that's more with these soft drugs like weeds and some smart drugs and psychedelics. But when it comes to like hard drugs and the party culture, then I feel Berlin, it's a lot more open, there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah? Do you think, can you sense that the clubbers consume it differently as well? Can you sense the difference in the energies at the club? Or like, what's your view on this?
Well, when it comes to consumption, it's always funny when I have friends over from Amsterdam. There's such a big difference in how they take drugs compared to people from Berlin, because in here, these stories where people go in a toilet stall with 10, 20 people, stay there for 30 minutes and like really make a social gathering out of like consuming drugs. While in Amsterdam, it's always like, you just take a little key bomb really quick. It's like in and out. So always when I have friends over and we have to go to the toilet and endless waiting, and they're always like, fuck, we don't have time for this in Amsterdam. So that's already a big difference that I noticed immediately. And I think energy-wise, it's not that much of a difference. I do feel that in Amsterdam, we don't have this 24-hour culture, so you can party for a long time, but you go from event to event to event, from club to club to club. You cannot like stay in a club from Saturday until Monday. That doesn't really happen in Amsterdam. So I do feel that in Berlin the energy is a bit more heavy. People take it further and longer and more to the extreme. While in Amsterdam it's a bit more chill. But in the end, two scenes full of ravers and who all consume drugs. And also a bit the same drugs. So energy-wise, I think maybe the biggest difference that I feel is that Berliners are maybe a bit more mature, or a part of the Berlin scene is a bit more mature, like raving and techno it's just part of the culture here. That's also a huge difference. In Amsterdam it's entertainment, here it's culture.
Ah, okay. Can you explain that further? What you mean with this?
Well, already if you look, I think at state level, is that clubs here in Berlin get a lot more money from the government. I think Berghain doesn't pay taxes, for instance, or less taxes because of a tax exempt, because they're a cultural institution. And these things are also not really present in the Netherlands. They really see it as businesses, where like in Netherlands we have more of a festival culture as well, and festivals are of course huge operations where people just go for 10 hours and you're like a product, you come, you line up, your ticket gets scanned, you get searched, so go in, have fun, and then exactly when the clock strikes midnight, okay, lights go on, music go off, fuck off everyone. And so they see it a bit like, that's what I mean with entertainment. People, it's more about entertaining than like having spaces for a group of people or community, and taking care of them as well. Because I think Netherlands is it's a bit harsher. Like I said, it's like you get kicked out when the lights go on. It's really strict. And I have a feeling that here in Berlin it's a bit more careful and it's a bit more community based, so to say.
Do you think that the care for the club goers is different in this sense, you mean?
I do.
Like people care for each other in a different way, like we are a community?
No, I think here in Berlin they understand a bit more like the needs and desires of ravers, like with these extended opening times, but also like because Berlin clubs allow, I think, a lot more hedonism, so to say, they also have this responsibility to take care of their people. And of course it's not everywhere, but there are a decent amount of clubs in Berlin where like awareness teams, for instance, that's something I really saw here for the first time, and of course it's now also happening in Amsterdam. But that's one thing I saw. And also just the feeling that I have myself when I'm in clubs. I just feel like, hey, it's okay to let go here, and it's okay to go on a bender for 2 days, and you feel safe. And it's a feeling. I don't know, maybe it's a personal thing, but I also feel that the spaces are much more set up to facilitate these kind of parties. And in Amsterdam, not every club is ready for it. No.
So you still party for 2 days straight?
No. I used to.
But you could.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, when I'm in Berlin now for 2 years, and it's only like 1 year that the club scene is open again. So of course I fell in love immediately after that happened, and had my little honeymoon phase where everything was new and exciting. But I have to say now, no, I'm the one who goes home, even if I go out all weekend, I go home, take a nap, even if it's like 4 or 5 hours, and then get ready again and come back. But I become not the most social and open person when I'm up for longer than 24 hours. Then I'm like, I don't like it, no.
But you did make a shift and started to take psychedelics as a party favor.
Yeah. That also happened recently. I've never been the biggest fan of just like taking a big dose of mushrooms or acid at parties. Some parties are really good for it, but some situations can also be really overwhelming, especially psychedelics. I see them more as a tool and a medicine. So I rather set up or I go to a ceremony which is being organized by a group or a person, or I do it at my own place where I make my own little ceremony and take the medicine and just sit.
With the medicine you mean mushrooms?
Yeah. I don't like to call them drugs. It's like, they're plant medicines anyways. They're being used for thousands of years by ancient civilizations, and they're still being used as what I call them medicines in the Amazon by indigenous people. And I think that's also the biggest potential you can get from, or that they have as a medicinal tool, as a tool for healing, as a tool for becoming aware of yourself, but also things outside of yourself. But one thing that really came out of nowhere suddenly in Amsterdam was liquid psilocybin. I do like this because it's like a small bottle. It looks like a bottle of G. It's like the same pipette, and you just take a little drip.
With G, you mean GHB?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you just drip. You take one drip, and it's a very it's not the super intense psychedelic trip that you can get when you take like a full dose of mushrooms or acid or whatever. But it's a very light, loving feeling that you get from it. And I feel like it opens my heart, and I like start hugging people. It's like it gives like really good vibes, and that's something. Then when I found out about this existing, because I never heard of this before. And I used it a few times. It was like, wow, this is such a much better way to party than take all these chemical substances, because less hangover or no hangover at all. Instead of like, you can have a bad trip, so to say, but if you like make sure that your setting and your mindset are good, and you're a bit experienced, then it's hard to have a bad trip. I also always say bad trips don't really exist. They just show you part of yourself that you might not like about yourself. And it can get scary. Or like I had in the ceremony that I talked about before, that I was like trying to stay in control. Like that trip could be labeled as a bad trip, but I learned a super valuable lesson from it, even though at the moment itself I was at the point of crying and running out into the darkness. So with this psilocybin, that for me that was when I really started using psychedelics.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
What's the difference between taking too much of this and feeling like that's showing you a part of yourself that you need to work with, and taking too much of something that is more synthetic, let's say like ecstasy? I don't know if it's more synthetic.
It would change. With synthetic drugs, people really go bad. I mean, if you see people like taking too much G, for instance, we all know these horror stories of people dying in clubs or.
But what if you would compare? Because like ecstasy is then one of the most common party flavors or party drugs.
Yeah.
So if we would just compare the two of them, like, what would you say is the main difference? Like, why would one of them be better?
The main difference when it comes to taking too much, I don't know. I never took too much ecstasy, so I don't know what will happen to you then. But I can only imagine being a more physical reaction, because I work in clubs. So I see people with too much ecstasy on the first aid. It's like your body just starts overheating, and it's just too much. So it's a very like physical, and I can imagine also a very scary reaction happening, because you really feel sick. Like, and the thing with psychedelics is it's all in your mind.
Can you ever take too much?
No, I think people accidentally took like 1,000 times the amount of acid that you should normally take, and I think they all came out of it without any problems. So I need to look up the article to give you the full details, but it's hard to to overdose on psychedelics. I'm pretty sure you also cannot really die from taking too many psychedelics. Of course, depends on the substance, but no one ever died from smoking too much weed. But with chemical substances, there's of course the risk of damaging your body. And I think that's the main difference, I'd say. But again, what was your intention of taking it? Was your intention of taking it to have a good time at a party, or was your intention when you took the substance to have a ceremony at home and learn something about yourself? And that also really depends on if you label it bad or good, so to say. So I think in the end, it's all about intention.
Are there, like, for the people there, as we all know, there are people who are kind of high, like hunting the high feeling. Do you think it could be dangerous in this way?
Not really. Yeah, of course. There's always, like, if you're chasing the highs, you start to become depending on something. But it's hard to chase a high with psychedelics. It's not like you can take another line and you get another rush. I mean, if you take another dose of mushrooms, you're going to be set for the next couple of hours. But also, I think psychedelics don't really work like that. You cannot really add much. I think it has, most important is the amount you take when you first take it. And then, of course, you can extend it a little bit or make it a bit more intense, but it's not the same. You cannot stack it, let's say, as you can do with chemical drugs. So it's hard to chase the high. And they have an anti-addictive mechanism built in it called... shit, I lost the word here.
We can cut and Google it.
Yeah, no, it's the... when you take something a lot and you become
become
toleration.
Resistant.
Yeah. So yeah, your tolerance builds up with psychedelics. So at some point it just doesn't work anymore, and you just literally have to wait a couple of days or weeks to get it out, and then you can have the effect again. It's the same with microdosing, for instance. There are these strategies for microdosing, and all of them have like a built-in month break. So you do it for a month, then you take a break for a month, because otherwise you're not gonna have the same effects, or you're gonna have to take more and more and more. So it's really hard to chase the highs when it comes to psychedelics, and that's also what I like so much about it. Is when you go out, you don't feel the need to like go and take more and push it and push it and push it. It also intensifies everything. So, like, if let's say you're used to taking chemical substances in a way, and if you're going to combine that with the psychedelics, it can have a totally different effect on you. So yeah, that's why I like it so much. It just brings you down, and after a good 6-7 hours, it like wears you out. You get tired. You want to go home and go to sleep, instead of like not being able to sleep and staying in a club for 12 more hours or 24 more hours.
All right.
So,
do you feel that that there is a change that's coming right now, where people are starting to party more on psychedelics, or do you feel that maybe you and, I don't know if you do it together with your friends, but that you are at the forefront, if so to say, with this?
Well, I have to say in Berlin, of course, but I don't really notice a lot of people taking psychedelics. When I talk about it, people are a bit afraid. Oh, really? Are you mushrooms right now? Like there's always I think because it are psychedelics and they can have such a great effect on your mind, you can have these trips. I think people are a bit more hesitant because it's easy to take a line. You know what to expect, and it's always going to be like that. But with psychedelics, it's a bit more like.
They feel a gamble.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Like, whoa, what if I...
Exactly, yeah. And that's the feeling I have here in Berlin. That's the most common reaction here in Berlin. But in Amsterdam, these liquid psilocybin drips that I was talking about, they are taking over. And everyone, so many of my friends are on them.
But they're not legal to buy?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you buy them from the same dealers that deal G? Or?
No. This is also because this was never never had dealers or people taking this or having this or selling this that recently came out of the blue, and it's also pretty hard to get it because they make it in batches. So when a batch is sold out, you just have to wait, and they put you on a waiting list, and then they make a new batch, and if they have enough for your position on the waiting list, you will get some. But if they're out already, then you have to wait for the next batch again. So this is a little bit different. But yeah, in the end, you buy it from a dealer. But I would say these are more, I think, people who are experimenting and also trying to make a change, because you don't go there to buy Coke or pills or whatever. It's just for this substance. So I have a feeling it's more like hobbyists, like people really trying to create something new and also in a beneficial way for the people taking it. So that's the difference. But yeah, I do think now, like, I see two things. One thing when it's really see happening both in Berlin and Amsterdam after the pandemic was G, that really like took off. But in the same time, I also, and that's bringing people down. But in the same time, I also see these psychedelics. I'm not saying that that's bringing people up, but it's I think
it's
a
a
bit
different
more
energy.
Yeah.
Because I hear people speaking about this. Also, DJs who notice when they go into certain rooms that the energy can be very low and that they can feel a difference depending on the city or club or, you know, maybe even the lineup somehow. Or like, and that it's just what you said, like, you know, the low of G can be very heavy and create like an atmosphere where that is not so uplifting and free, and like people go to clubs to avoid the pressure of society. So it just kind of like works against it somehow.
Yeah, I think you said it very well, and also have to say, I mentioned G, but it can be any other drug where people take it too far. Like G is a very easy drug to take it too far with, but it's like every room or place where people are just too fucked or too high will lower the energy, of course, and it doesn't really matter what substance you're on. I think in the end it's more about how you take care of yourself, and also being a bit more intentionful about yourself when you go out and when you step into a club or a festival or whatever. It's about like, am I going there to get completely shit-faced? Because that's the energy that you will eventually transmit when you're in such a space or in such a dance floor. But I think if you're a bit more conscious about yourself and you don't take it too far, you don't forget to go home, you sleep, you eat well, I think those are the factors, and also the substances you take, that are contributing to like a higher frequency on the dance floor. Can
I ask, so like if you come, because as said, in some rooms the energy is heavier, in some rooms it's more uplifting. So if coming to a room that with a pretty heavy energy or a pretty dense energy, and you are on psychedelics, what happens?
Oh well, yeah. I had that one time. There was my one time that it was a bit too heavy for me, and I went home eventually. It's when the psychedelics didn't really work out. Were the same mushroom drips, and I just remember like being on the dance floor, and in the moment the energy was like super wild. It was like a boiling pan of water, like super intense, and I was really feeling it. So I was like, okay, maybe I should take a drop now. So I took one, and then when it started working, like if you take psychedelics, you will know that once it starts working, you feel a bit drowsy. It becomes heavy on your body. It's like psychedelics can be a bit of a downer, and like they calm you down. They ground you. And that was totally not matching the energy in the room at the time. So I was like, it's just way too much, way too intense.
I don't know. I get this feeling that this is like, that there is probably gonna be a shift to how people use drugs, as many people, or like there are reports that it's increasing the use of drugs, not only in Germany but all over, at least Europe, that I'm aware of. And maybe people are going to realize like it's not sustainable to use it in this manner. Do you think that like going over to psychedelics or this form of party favor says anything or can say anything about the time that we're living in?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, this is a very deep story that I want to tell, but I think that the first part of what you said, like the people trying to escape from the pressure of society, I'm not sure if that's something you can change, because in the end, this is my favorite subject. Like you call it society, I call it capitalism. I think we're all living under the struggle of capitalism, and a lot of people are not realizing that. And I see that as an invisible prison. It's like, as long as you have to go and spend 8 hours of your day to work for someone else who makes money over your back, I don't call that life. That's like, it's prison to me. And I mean, I think most people, if they skip one paycheck, they will lose their houses or are not able to put food on the table anymore. So there's this constant pressure of surviving in our world. And even though we don't see it like this, we think we live in free Western democratic society, it's like, I still feel that a lot of people have this invisible burden on their backs that they're not even aware of. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I don't feel that there will be like, that soon people will become like more lighter, more like open, because everything keeps getting more expensive. Life is becoming more of a struggle. It's not becoming easier. So it's a very sad story if you look at the world like this. But
no, it's reality.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it is, and I would love to see, and I think they can be a tool for this transition, is that psychedelics will start opening people's minds and start making people aware of what's going on in their worlds, and that it's not okay, and hopefully they will get fucking upset about it and, I don't know, go in the streets and make changes, or like force changes to happen. That's something I think psychedelics can help us to reach, but it's difficult. And as long as you take these psychedelics just to replace your chemical substances, of course, energy, I think in general, will be a little bit better, but it's still a way to escape from the pressure. And when you escaping from pressure, your intention is not like being high energy, that like your frequency is not being lifted because you're bringing it down. You're escaping from something, and what is escaping? It's, in our world, is taking substances and staying up for super long. And of course, that's not going to lift your energy and raise the spirit. That's going to bring you down. And that's sad, because we're all in these places to celebrate life, but in the same time, we're actually escaping from life. We're not really celebrating it. We're trying to, avoid it,
just get
away from it. Yeah, and that's really sad, but also something. I think it just is what it is. And
it is what it is.
Yeah, I hope psychedelics will like be the acceleration or the catalysator of a change, of a movement. I mean, it already happened in the 60s and the 70s, of course. So I think there you have your answer already. It can definitely help for change. But it's hard because, like, when I talk about this with people, most of the people don't seem to realize this, and they think everything is perfectly fine as it is. This is just the way the world works. But yeah, psychedelics and plant medicines, not only, but they have like at least helped me to expand my awareness and consciousness and see that a lot of things are not like supposed to be like this. And of course, it is the way that things goes, but it's just because there are a lot of people making a lot of money and they're benefiting from it, and they don't care about you or me or like the average people. And as long as we have this system in place, it's going to be super hard to make changes. But in the meantime, I still don't blame people for running away from that, because that's their, like, I'm happy for them that they can escape. And I mean, I always have to remind myself how lucky I am that I've been in this music industry from like such a young age, because I still work, and I also make sometimes like work extreme hours, but I'm always doing what I love.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go to an office and work for a boss that I don't like, doing something I've like, nothing, it's not a part of my actual life.
It feels like you want to...
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
No,
but there's so many people for whom that's...
it's a privilege. Yeah, that's for sure.
To close this off, this is like a recent mushroom trip is what showed me. I went to the school in Amsterdam, took one of these drops, but pretty late in the night. So when I walked out, when the club was closing, it was like still active, and it was beautiful. It was one of the first spring days. So I walked out, like going in darkness, and you walk out, and it was a beautiful day. I was like, I want to walk home. So I went to a coffee shop, bought a joint, and of course that made everything more strong. And the club is located in a park. So the first part of my walk was through a park, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, nature looked so beautiful, and was like just walking there, just had a good night with my friends, smoking a joint, beautiful. But then I had to go out of the park and walk a bit through town, and that's when I started looking at all these apartment blocks and complexes, and then I started realizing that like I was walking there, like still being high, enjoying life, like, but it was all because of like my music journey that I'm following in life. But I was realizing that just like me, there are thousands of people like living in these apartments that I was looking at, and they all also had like their lives like I have, and that already was like a super deep realization because I never really thought about that. But then I became really sad because I saw this like just came out of the park, everything beautiful, then I was on the streets, everything was dirty,
Reality.
cars everywhere, noise, and like people who don't have like a passion in life or like something that they can find their ways in this fucked up system that like at least makes it a bit more bearable for them. That's really fucked. If you just grow up, you finish your school, you get your job, and then for the next 40 years you just go to the office, or I don't know, just destroy your body by doing physical labor and for someone else.
Yeah, it's rough. And for the people who are listening who are in this situation, I don't know what to say. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, but I was just thinking if I would have listened to this and I'd be having a corporate job and not knowing my passion, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So
well, find your passion would be good advice,
passion.
but in the other way, that's also very privileged to say because some
it's
people,
not so easy.
Yeah, they might have a passion, but then try to make a living out of it or make a life out of it, so to say. So still having a passion.
Yeah, but like finding whatever you. I got the best advice from a lady one time, and she said like, because I was feeling super lost in my early 20s, and she was like, do whatever you think makes you happy, and then you're gonna find the right way.
No.
And I think that's the best advice anyone could ever get, because we are very privileged to have this opportunity to actually do, like, we can have an extra job and then we can do things on the side. We have, but yeah. Anyways, very Nick, nice. Thank you so much. This was welcome. A beautiful episode. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks again for inviting me.
This was it for Playful Podcast this week, but please follow, subscribe, and listen to our next episode. And if you want to have a say about future artists or even ask your own question to one of our guests, follow us on Instagram and make sure to add your question when we lift our coming guests. Thank you so much for joining and see you next week.